Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy Monday, Dr. Paul.
Very good. Have an interesting subject today.
Indeed.
You'll be astounded about what we, and you've already discovered it, and that is that our government actually pays money to promote war propaganda. Here I always thought it was just the media. I thought they were owned by the media, and the media was doing this, and the left wing was doing it, and the neocons were doing it, and all of this. But it turns out that the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which evidently is a remarkable group, because they did some true investigation, and that is to look into, guess what? Our CIA and our Pentagon, National Security Council, was involved in promoting war propaganda, distorting the truth. Can you believe that about what was going on in Iraq? It wasn't before the war started, but after it got going, you know, and they had to, I guess when it was going badly, they needed a lot more war propaganda. And they were doing fake films under the guise of reporting the news. And it wasn't a couple dollars, you know, it was half $500 million that they spent. And there was one particular firm that made this money. So it's big business. It's you know, we have the military-industrial complex. I guess we have a PR-industrial complex now, and making a lot of bucks and doing so much harm. You know, it'd be better if they just burned that money than allow them to spend it on something like this.
And of course, they'll sell it as they were spending this money to alter perceptions in Iraq to help the war-fighting capability more. And, you know, that's one thing, you know, as you point out, $500 million. But what Bell Pottinger did, which is the company that got this huge contract, is they made films for the Pentagon. And they worked for two different groups, the Information Operations Task Force. And that's the stuff we know about. But they also worked for the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force. And that's the kind of black propaganda that we don't know exactly what happened. What we know from the stuff from the Information Operations is they made three types of films. They made TV commercials portraying Al-Qaeda in a bad light. And I would have done it for half the money. It's not that hard. News items made to look as if they were produced by Arabic television. And the production of, this is the black propaganda is the third one, the production of fake Al-Qaeda propaganda films. And then they would take the CDs of these fake films and just drop them as they went on patrol. And there was a little bit of code in there that would allow them to use Google to find out who was watching these propaganda films. So they could trace it from Iraq. Then they said they found some in Iran, some even in the U.S. So they made their way back to U.S. shores, and nobody knew that they were in fact produced by this company.
You know, this it is rather disgusting, you know, this whole thing. But what bothers me is that this is good information. This was sort of breaking information just recently, and The Guardian published it.
The Times, yeah.
Yeah, and The Times. And it's leaking out, but I don't think we're going to see it on the average news program in this country. I mean, it's almost like don't allow the American people to be exposed to the truth. They might change their attitude. And, of course, we do know that, you know, in a system that is authoritarian and empire, they don't want the truth. Truth becomes treasonous, and all we have to do is look around at how many whistleblowers we have are threatened or get put in jail. So it's more of the same thing. It's artificial, and there's a lot of money to be made. You know, whether it starts off with the arms manufacturers or the media, but here it is a PR firm making a lot of money. And I recall, you know, in the early 1990s, you know, the Persian Gulf War, there was some false propaganda, and later on it was found out that some of our companies were putting out these lies and how bad Saddam Hussein was. And of course, he wasn't the greatest guy in the world, but they still had to build up. They still had to have Hitler. They still had to build up the hate to energize the people, because if they don't create this enemy, then the people won't support it. You know, just a bad guy, but you have to really have a monster. You have to create a Hitler in order to get people to sacrifice their lives and their money and go off and see their kids all shot up. And the people usually get converted to that. So it seems like long term, it's this type of information that we do need. And this bureau has to be, very special as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's very sad because they keep doing it over and over again. It gets exposed as lies. Hillary Knowlton was involved in the first Iraq War. Remember, they had the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter masquerading as a refugee, talking about babies thrown from incubators. All complete lies. We know now that the Iraq War was based on lies completely. The Libya War was based on lies. And now we're ready to start a new war invading Syria. And that's mostly based on lies as well. So it keeps working and they keep doing it. But you make a good point about the firms getting rich. And I was reading in one of the reports that between 2006 and 2008, more than 40 media companies, PR companies, were paid for services to the Pentagon for this war. And I remember at the time when we were on the Hill, so many of these companies were coming up out of nowhere. They had fancy names and fancy titles. People were getting so fabulously wealthy off this war.
And some people put that in the category, well, that's why free enterprise is bad. That's a long way from free enterprise and the market economy. That's corporatism at its worst, because not only do they use the system to make money and profits, but it's also to promote something so evil as to convert people into going to war when they shouldn't be doing it. But I thought the Bureau did a good job in talking. They talked to the former CEO of the company and the videographer, who was a little bit, the story was that he was a little bit shocked when he was hired. He thought he was going to go and report the news, and he finally found out. And at least they've been talking. The company, I understand now, has been sold, and the people who did these things aren't around, and nobody's going to be really punished. The only benefit can come from this, that it would be significant, would be the revelation of truth. Wake up people, and when they hear this propaganda, where is it going to be next? I mean, we did it with, Gaddafi. We had to go save the people from Gaddafi. And, of course, now we're saving the people from Assad. And Assad has to go. Well, he's been around a long time, and his father was around here for a long time, and they had a mess over there for a long time. But they still have to build the propaganda. They're killing innocent people. Yeah. It's in the name of propagandizing and saying, well, we got to get these bad dictators. But how many innocent people does our government, get involved in? And I think they take a bad situation and make it 10 times worse.
Yeah, and they started out with the simple role to promote democratic elections in Iraq. First of all, is that even a role that we should be taking? We went in there, we blew the country to pieces, and then we hire a PR firm to promote democratic elections there. And then it moved on to what the UK Times reported as a wider and secret propaganda program to promote the U.S. agenda covertly across the media. And what's interesting about that, they hired this British firm initially because of restrictions at the time on the U.S. government using U.S. tax money to propagandize Americans. And that was a problem. This was in 1948, the Smith-Mund Act, which was pretty sensible. You shouldn't be forced to pay to propagandize yourself. But I know you're going to be shocked. It was modernized recently.
Reformed.
Reformed.
Yeah.
In 2012, and it was on one of the bills that are so notorious, the NDAA. Oh. I think it was Mac Thornberry that introduced the amendment to overturn this, so now we can pay to be propagandized ourselves.
I remember that bill well. It was, of course, most everything in there could be opposed to, but I think we needed to read about the first paragraph or read the title, and we knew how bad the bill was. But, somebody maybe in the Pentagon or in the military that was being reported to would have recognized, well, this is not exactly the American way to do things. But I think there was a general, I think he's been in the news before, David Petraeus was, a participant in this, knew about this thing. But I guess that's part of defending our country is, perpetuate the lies and the propaganda to justify their existence. And, if a war happens to be legitimate, which is pretty rare, you don't have to propagandize. People know their liberties are threatened, and they have to do something about it. Of course, my big concern now is not so much that we even should be dealing with that, because I don't see any country invading us. But our liberties are truly threatened, and that, of course, is to try to get the people alert to the real danger. And the real danger comes out of Washington, D.C., with the same kind of people that run these propaganda schemes, to get us into foreign wars. They're the same people who propagandize, the need to take care of the people, the safety nets and all this stuff, and protect against those terrible free enterprise people and this sort of thing. So it's we still have a big job ahead of us, and the propaganda. I imagine that's happened, throughout history to some degree, but this is big business today, a lot bigger than I think both of us really expected to think that, just in a couple-year period, one company got paid $500 million to lie to the people of the world. And then, the British seem to be a little bit better on picking up on this, when things go badly. When the Chilcot Commission investigated, the Iraq War, and found out that it was based on lies and deceit. And Blair, his reputation was worsened by that. But even recently, they had a commission, a legislative commission, looking into Libya, and found out that it was based on lies and innuendo, and Cameron suffered from that. But we don't seem to have the same investigation, but maybe I should know the answer, is because you don't really have two parties. Everybody say, why doesn't the new party always clean up the mess of the others? Why wasn't the information dealing with Bush being involved in things cleaned up by the Democrats? But they just put it aside. They actually cooperate on keeping things secret, the top secret things. They do not expose them. So one party literally doesn't get involved. So if Republicans win this time, do you think we're going to know everything that ever happened in the Clinton era and the Obama era? I don't believe it for a minute. I don't believe they'll clean it up.
Going back to Petraeus, because I wanted to mention this. Here's an irony, and I think it shows how Washington works. Petraeus was spending all this money, or at least he was overseeing the expenditure of these millions and millions of dollars to produce videos saying how bad Al Qaeda is. Okay, fair enough. But, just a few months ago, he wrote an article in a major U.S. newspaper saying we need to start arming and funding Al Qaeda in Syria because Assad is that much worse. And nobody bats an eye when such craziness comes out of these people.
Well, they don't have a basic principle other than power and authority. And if you support somebody like we have in the various countries for a long time, and then we decide, well, we'll cast him aside, and get rid of that individual. And it's not just infrequent. That's a frequent thing. It has nothing to do with basic principles. And I keep arguing that so many of these problems around the world that we pretend that we're going to solve should be solved by, an understanding of self-determination, which is difficult because, even if we believed in that, there'd be other countries that would want to violate that. But if you had problems, if you had civil strife in Libya, if we had not gone in there and prompted the British and the French to get involved and NATO get involved, it's unlikely that another superpower would have immediately gone in and created the chaos in Libya. And we still have chaos in Libya. That's going to go on a long time. And I find it interesting, too. This is we have an administration that was supposed to be less militant. They were for peace, and yet this was 2011. They messed up in Libya. Same time we had to start a new one. Or take advantage of chaos in Syria and make it 10 times worse. And our policy there is Assad has to go. So it's based on this philosophy that we have this moral responsibility. I always put it in high tones. And of course that's what the propagandists have to do, because if it were known that it's just for a self-serving reason, financial reasons, and protect the oil and all these other things, people would say no way. But as long as they know that this guy is very, very bad, he's Hitler incarnate, and therefore we have to sacrifice more kids, have more people killed and killing children overseas in these countries, collateral damage. It just goes on and on.
Yeah. I had 4 questions that sprang to my mind about these propaganda videos. Okay, they say it was to help the fight in Iraq. That was what they were produced for. But they did make it around the world. So I thought, where else did these fake videos end up? Did they skew the U.S. view of the war? Did they alter our perceptions of how the war was going? Did they create fake surge propaganda? Because this was going around the time of the surge. And you remember on the Hill at the time, you couldn't say a boo about the surge. It was the greatest thing since sliced bread. That all disintegrated. And ultimately, what difference did it make? In the famous words of Hillary Clinton, $500 million spent on this war propaganda, whether it was supposed to propagandize the Iraqis and not us. It doesn't matter because it's a mess. It's a total disaster. It's a total failure. The only difference is this company is $500 million richer, and the rest of us are $500 million poorer.
That's right, and there's no suggestion that the policies should change. And of course, Hillary was a little bit involved in Libya, and she was saying that what difference it makes. It makes a big difference, but they never talk about making the difference in the policy. It's always some tactical process. If we had only done this or had more troops, they still argue that. They argue that, we could have won in Vietnam. We could have had 1 million people there for 40 years. Maybe we could have won if we'd have just really fought it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and I think it's a truly phenomenal revelation here to find out concretely the kind of things that we suspected or complained about, that the propaganda is out there. The one thing that is new for me is how the PR firms, I knew they were involved to a degree, but to one company getting $500 million to propagandize and promote a favorable light on the Iraq war. I mean, this is atrocious. But the war propagandists have been around a long time. I think it's immoral, deceitful, promoting wars that we shouldn't fight, and there's always somebody that has an angle. But eventually, with the improvement in communications in the world today, especially with the internet and other ways, we shouldn't allow this to happen. We should be able to get this information out, because they're not going to get it from the major networks. They're not all of a sudden going to be not participants in this propaganda for world domination and actually contributing to this Marxist culturalism, which is getting worse all the time. So truth is something that we should seek out, and we also know that truth is treason in an empire of lies. We need to get rid of the empire. We need to dedicate ourselves to the protection of liberty and get people to understand what individual liberty is, and to narrow it down that government ought to be designed for the protection of liberty and put the responsibility on individuals, families, friends, and neighbors to care for themselves and even provide for their own protection and their safety net. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.